Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Raised by Wolves, Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. At the end of last season, Mother gave birth to her 7th child. To everyone's shock, the little one turned out to be a snake. Fearing that this strange creature might harm her other children, Mother and Father boarded their airship and plunged into the planet's molten core. Unexpectedly, they passed through the core and emerged on the other side of Kepler 22b, while the snake rapidly matured and flew off at the speed of light. This brings us to the opening of Season 2. Mother and Father, now injured and in disrepair, lay discarded in a forest like broken-down scrap metal. They were soon discovered by a group of atheists. Realizing that the 2 androids were still in decent shape, the atheists decided to take them back, patch them up, and repurpose them for another 3 years. The 2 were transported to the atheists' primary colony called the Collective. This settlement was managed entirely by Trust, a 6th-generation quantum computer overseeing every aspect of daily life, from clothing and food to living arrangements. Under Trust's authorization, Mother and Father were recharged. During repairs, a technician attempted to retrieve their memories by opening Mother's abdomen to access her processor. After fumbling around for a while, he found nothing. Only then did the technician realize that these were not service androids, but necromancer androids. By then, it was too late. His hands, contaminated by her fuel-like blood, mutated, and he died instantly. Mother, fully restored, sprang into action. Just as she was about to eliminate the military officer present, a voice stopped her. Following its guidance, she arrived at a massive, freezing chamber where she encountered a glowing green pillar. It's the computer Trust, the source of the voice and the absolute ruler of the colony. The quantum computer revealed to Mother that it was her sibling, as they were both created by Campion. Seizing the opportunity, Mother asked if Trust had seen a dangerous creature aboard their airship. Trust assured her that the airship had already crashed, putting her at ease. It also informed her that her children had been found and brought back safely. Overjoyed, Mother rushed to reunite with them, though not all of the children were eager to stay in enemy territory. However, the tropical zone proved irresistibly pleasant, with its perfect weather and abundant, juicy fruits. Most importantly, Mother, now blind, lacked the ability to protect them elsewhere. At least here, they could rely on Trust's protection. The family settled into a new home, and Mother resolved to embrace her role as a service android again, determined to raise her children properly. Meanwhile, Father abandoned his plan to erase his memories, though he cheekily claimed he would delay it and decide later. Mother smiled knowingly, pleased that she still had a chance to make amends with him. While life in the Collective thrived, things weren't going so well for the Mithraic followers. The captured believers were enslaved, forced to work for the atheists while wearing explosive vests. Meanwhile, Marcus, left stranded on the other side of the planet, struggled to survive in the harsh wilderness. His luck turned, however, when he stumbled upon an abandoned atheist bomber. Following its guidance, Marcus arrived near the Collective but was quickly discovered. In the ensuing chaos, both Marcus and the bomber crashed into an acid sea. As its name suggests, the sea was highly corrosive. Just as the bomber was dissolved, Marcus used a laser cable to swing himself to safety on the shore. After narrowly escaping death, Marcus explored the coastline and discovered some ancient tarot cards. Shortly after, he came across a ruined church with a giant sun emblem carved into its stone walls. Awestruck, Marcus believed this to be an oracle from the sun god, guiding him to rebuild the Mithraic faith. He soon found allies, 2 Mithraic escapees from the Collective. Unfortunately, one died in an explosion, leaving behind a mother, Decima, and her daughter, Vril. However, Vril wasn't human but an android modeled after Decima's deceased child. Marcus dismantled their explosive vests and welcomed them into his new faith, securing his first followers. Back at the colony, Paul was finally reunited with his family. Despite his confinement for unwavering loyalty to the Mithraic faith, and even losing his pet mouse to Trust, his resolve remained unshaken. Fueled by mysterious whispers, Paul uncovered the truth about his biological parents' deaths, fueling his hatred towards Sue. Devastated, Sue requested a transfer to another colony. Before departing, she confided in Mother about hearing the same whispers, claiming the voice had tried to manipulate her into betraying her family. Sue theorized that if both humans and androids could hear the voice, it must be some kind of signal. The 2 women agreed to work together to trace its origin. Back at home, Mother discovered Campion crafting projectiles from local fruit. Worried they might be poisonous, she suggested testing them first. Father, however, praised Campion's ingenuity and encouraged respecting his autonomy. Taking the opportunity, Mother tasked Campion with helping Paul return to normal. Campion replied that during their time wandering in the wilderness, he had been the one taking care of everyone like a father figure. In other words, Mother needn't worry. He'd look after Paul just fine. Proud of her son, Mother reflected on how she had once abandoned Campion for the sake of the serpent. She promised that once trust relinquished its control, she would make Campion the leader of humanity, convinced he was the orphan of prophecy. But Campion refused. He had no desire to lead. A new day began, and the family joined in the community's daily tasks. While others were assigned to pick fruit, Mother was sent to care for the children, who were collectively raised by the settlement. Mother found some eggs and taught the children to paint on them. Suddenly, she noticed a boy painting a snake. Remembering her past traumatic experiences, she gently reminded the boy not to draw such frightening things. Unexpectedly, the boy retorted that it wasn't scary at all, as all life was beautiful. Mother was deeply moved by his words. Meanwhile, Father and Vita discovered a cave filled with mysterious symbols on its walls. Inside a pile of sand, they stumbled upon the remains of an android. Intrigued, Father decided to bring the remains back for study. Campion and Paul also worked well together, with Campion picking melons from the trees and Paul collecting them below. Both of them stumbled upon surprises at almost the same time. Campion found a black egg in a bird's nest, intending to hatch it as a pet, while Paul discovered an ancient five-sided box engraved with Mithraic symbols, including the prophesied Tree of Knowledge. Excited, Paul became convinced he was the chosen orphan savior and insisted on bringing the box back. Campion pointed out that it was against the rules to keep anything privately from the community, but since he had taken the egg himself, the brothers agreed to cover for each other. At Marcus's base, he declared his grand ambition to revive the Mithraic faith. When he learned that Decima had once been a Mithraic quantum engineer, his excitement grew. He believed the sun god's soul had delivered a technical expert to assist his cause. Although their numbers were small, Marcus had faith, passion, and a vision, not just the cold, mechanical commands of a computer. He was confident he would win over more people eventually, and indeed, his prediction wasn't far off. That night, someone in the community defied Trust's orders and set fire to Campion's home, leaving a blazing sun emblem, the symbol of Saul, as a warning. The next day, Sue arrived to investigate the arson and brought weapons for the children to defend themselves. She also resumed her former profession as a doctor in the atheist settlement. Taking advantage of her position, Sue accessed records about Kepler 22b and discovered evidence of a mysterious signal. However, this signal couldn't penetrate the electromagnetic fields over the tropical zone, which explained why Mother had stopped hearing the strange voice after arriving there. Trust quickly identified the arsonist, and Mother was tasked with punishing the culprit. Justice was served, but instead of feeling satisfied, Mother's expression under her mask revealed her inner struggle and sympathy. Perhaps she, like humans, was developing empathy. Later, she confided in Father, asking him not to tell the children about her role as the enforcer, fearing they might think terrifying Mother had returned. Relieved to hear the danger was resolved, Father's smile remained uneasy. He too sympathized with the arsonist. That evening, the beaten arsonist personally apologized under Trust's orders, confessing and seeking forgiveness from the entire community, especially Campion's family. Seeing the bruised and battered man, Campion felt uneasy and confessed his own mistakes to Mother, handing over both the five-sided box and the black egg. Mother reassured him not to worry, promising to tell Trust that she had brought the box back. As for the black egg, she suggested returning it, as it couldn't hatch without its mother. Obediently, Campion climbed the tree to return the egg, but as he climbed, he slipped, accidentally crushing the egg in his hand. As he lamented, a giant serpent slithered up the tree. At the same time, the arsonist escaped. It turned out he had never truly submitted to Trust, believing that advanced humans shouldn't be subservient to a computer. To him, the enemy of his enemy was a friend. Hearing the commotion, Marcus rushed to help the arsonist evade the atheist's pursuit. As the acid sea's tide rose, the group quickly relocated to a nearby church, taking down their pursuers along the way. Elsewhere, Mother handed over the box to Trust, which enraged Paul. He was convinced that the seeds of the Tree of Knowledge were inside the box. Meanwhile, Father, noticing that Campion had been gone for a long time, alerted the family. Mother hurriedly searched the wilderness and found Campion unconscious on the ground with the giant serpent coiled around him. Furious, Mother shouted at the serpent to leave. The serpent flew away, howling as it passed through the camp. Panic ensued, with everyone retreating into the cabins. However, Father and the children were left outside, either by accident or intentionally excluded by those inside. In a twist of fate, a force from the seabed flipped the entire cabin over. Those inside perished, and everyone assumed the serpent was the killer. The next day, Trust mobilized the community to exterminate the giant serpent. Father was assigned a dangerous mission, leading a decoy team composed of Mithraic followers to lure out the serpent. As the name suggests, the decoy team's role was to attract the serpent and be swallowed along with their bomb vests. Father activated a control device, warning them that if anyone strayed more than 15 kilometers from him, the bombs would automatically detonate. Ever since Mother saw the serpent, she had been uneasy, especially when her artificial interface began producing milk. Could this serpent actually be her baby snake from before? If the serpent turned out to be dangerous, Mother was determined to put an end to it, even if it meant killing her own child. Before leaving, she asked Sue to seal her milk ducts. As for the story of her giving birth to the serpent, only Father knew. Everyone else believed the seventh child had perished prematurely. To Mother, the seventh was a complete failure. Although she had lost her laser eyes, she was still far more powerful than any human. Logic told her it was her responsibility to clean up the mess she created, but emotionally, she couldn't help feeling sorrowful. She asked Sue if there was a way to suppress emotions. Sue replied that, in her experience, the best solution was simply endurance. Campion had a close encounter with the serpent once and came away unharmed, believing it wasn't a bloodthirsty monster, but more like a lost child. Paul, however, believed the serpent was a divine agent sent by Saul to assist. The two brothers joined forces to secretly aid in the search for the serpent. Elsewhere, Marcus and his group prepared to seize a tank amid the chaos. Marcus gave an impassioned speech, and the arsonist-turned-zealot eagerly volunteered to plant explosives under the tank. After the successful blast, Marcus easily gunned down the soldiers, capturing the tank and intercepting atheist intelligence about the serpent's location. Decima, interpreting the prophecy, deduced that the serpent was the holy sword in its true form, insisting they must capture it at all costs. During these events, Vril witnessed Marcus's brutal killings and felt increasingly uneasy. Decima suggested she return to recharge and rest. However, on her way back, Vril was spotted by an atheist tank patrol and was injured in a hail of gunfire. Fortunately, she encountered Campion and Paul, who helped her return home. Campion, raised by androids, had an unusual level of empathy for machines and was determined to assist Vril. Mother discovered a shed serpent skin. She couldn't help but feel maternal love for her child, but the thought of the serpent killing people snapped her back to reality. She declared it a monster deserving death and burned the skin. Resolutely, she continued her search, soon stumbling upon a crude serpent trap set up by the atheists. Annoyed by its simplicity, she destroyed it with a single shot. Angered, the officer in charge reported her interference to Trust, but to his surprise, Trust ordered full cooperation with Mother's actions. Meanwhile, Father encountered Marcus, who enthusiastically pitched his vision of welcoming all believers into his warm and accepting community. Father, of course, refused and immediately attacked. Marcus's veins bulged as his strength surged unnaturally, and he easily killed Father within moments. But death wasn't new to Father. He was used to it. Marcus then ordered the bomb vests removed and successfully recruited several new followers. Among them, however, was a bearded man, Lucius, who despised Marcus as a heretic, the same man who had once shoved Mother's eyes into Marcus's mouth. Their mutual disdain led to a brief argument before they parted ways. Vril led Campion and Paul to a seaside church. Paul was overjoyed to see Saul's symbols, while Campion focused on tending to Vril's injuries. Vril revealed that Decima had modeled her after her deceased daughter, whose emotional sensitivity often caused strain on the system. Campion comforted Vril, encouraging her to embrace her own identity rather than imitating someone else. However, the philosophical weight of this advice overwhelmed Vril, whose programming struggled to process it. She pondered whom to emulate if not the original Vril, teetering on the edge of self-destruction. Paul then discovered Marcus's dagger and immediately sensed danger, urging Campion to return home. On their way, they encountered Marcus's recruitment army near the church, but managed to evade them by hiding among the rocks. The serpent's roar echoed from the mountains, and Mother climbed toward the sound. When she finally faced the serpent, she hesitated to kill it. To test its nature, she broke a bird's neck to see if it would attack, but the serpent disdainfully ignored it and instead ate some wild squash. To her surprise, the serpent was a vegetarian. Overjoyed, Mother lured it it down the mountain with squash and began to secretly raise it. This decision was met with fierce opposition from the community. Mother assured them that the serpent posed no threat, having passed her tests, and that its scales were not acid-resistant, ruling it out as the killer. Campion stood by her side, further infuriating Father, who had been repaired by then. Father's programming dictated that the giant serpent was a severe threat to the children's safety and must be eliminated. However, Mother's nurturing protocol compelled her to protect the serpent, as it was her child. Faced with Mother's firm stance, Father was powerless. Frustrated, he retreated to the storage room to vent his emotions, lamenting that he couldn't bring himself to act because he cared too much about Mother's happiness. But honestly, that confession should have been directed at Mother, not mumbled to the remains of an android. Fuel blood continued to seep from a wound near Father's ear, and he casually tossed the blood-stained cloth onto the android remains. Then, something miraculous happened. The plants covering the remains withered instantly, and soft tissue began to grow on the skeleton. Seeing this, Father hurriedly squeezed out more of his fuel blood. This time, the black orb embedded within the remains responded as well. Overjoyed, Father realized that perhaps Mother wasn't the only one capable of creating life after all. Elsewhere, Sue was about to go to bed when Trust abruptly summoned her for overtime work. Samples taken from the serpent's body turned out to be an organic compound highly suitable for weaponization. However, judging by the milk found in its stomach, the serpent was still in its infancy, only about 6 months old. Piecing everything together, Sue began to suspect that the serpent was the very 7th child Mother had claimed had died prematurely. After all, she had previously assisted Mother with prenatal checkups and had felt something was off with the fetus. Trust also sought out Paul, questioning him about Marcus's whereabouts. They even used Paul's beloved pet mouse as bait. Logically, Paul shouldn't have helped his enemy. However, his devotion to Saul and his lingering familial bond with Marcus left him conflicted. After returning from the seaside, Paul decided he wouldn't betray his father. He also made Campion promise not to speak out, because if the atheists destroyed Marcus, Vril would likely lose her life as well. No matter how much Trust threatened or tempted him, Paul remained silent. Frustrated, Trust eventually returned the pet mouse and announced that they would destroy Marcus in 24 hours. Outwardly calm but internally panicking, Paul decided to ditch work, dragging Campion along to warn Marcus. Along the way, they ran into Holly, a devout Mithraic follower, and brought her into the plan. The three reached the seaside but hesitated about revealing their intentions. Before they could decide, Marcus spotted them first. Paul finally stepped forward, resolved to rejoin the Mithraic faith. Meanwhile, the android remains Father had stumbled upon were growing fuller and more lifelike, but the trickle of fuel blood from his wound wasn't enough to sustain the process. So Father and Hunter headed to the marketplace to buy more. Unfortunately, the ancient trading cards Father brought along had become commonplace, and merchants were now more interested in goods from Earth. When Hunter offered his Mithraic sun pendant as a trade, Father stopped him. As they turned to leave, the shopkeeper called them back, proposing a deal. If Father could defeat an industrial robot in battle, she'd give him the fuel blood. The industrial robot, made of solid steel, wielded a massive chainsaw in one hand and a machine gun in the other. Seeing this, Hunter hurriedly placed his sun pendant around Father's neck for good luck. Being a high-end service android, Father naturally relied on strategy to win. Within a few rounds, he dismantled the industrial robot, earning cheers from the crowd and securing the fuel blood, a well-deserved moment of glory. Marcus, now forewarned by Paul, increased his defenses, but half a day passed without any sign of an attack. Just as they prepared to move to a new location, Paul's pet mouse suddenly died, and scales began to grow on Paul's body. It turned out that Trust had implanted a bioweapon in the mouse. Marcus, horrified, carried Paul to the beach, praying to Saul for healing light, but his prayers went unanswered. Only then did Marcus realize that Trust had likely set this trap because Paul had been here earlier. Atheist forces would soon invade. To preserve their strength, Marcus ordered his troops to retreat, leaving only himself to care for Paul. Campion decided to seek Mother's help. Decima, fearing Campion might reveal their plans, immediately issued a high-priority command to her daughter Vril, instructing her to capture Campion. However, the arsonist didn't trust Vril and followed along to keep an eye on her. Vril eventually caught up with Campion, knocking him down with a punch. Apologetically, she explained that she couldn't disobey a high-priority command. Just as she prepared to take Campion back to the main group, a pair of hands gripped her legs tightly, dragging her toward the acid sea. In a moment of crisis, Campion grabbed a rock and killed the attacker, a hybrid creature, half human and half fish. Upon closer inspection, the mermaid-like alien had an eerie beauty, even in death. No matter how you look at it, Campion took a life to save the android Vril. Afterward, he even helped bandage her wounds, which made Vril give up on carrying out her orders. However, the arsonist soon caught up and fired his gun to stop Campion from escaping. Just as Campion tripped and was about to be shot, a figure glowing with golden light appeared behind the arsonist. Taking advantage of the distraction, Campion fled back to the camp and immediately told Mother about Paul's worsening condition. Vril, limping on one leg, eventually made her way back to the main group. But the arsonist had already reported her betrayal, adding accusations about her sneaking Campion and others back to the church. If Decima kept defending Vril, it would seem disloyal to the organization. To prove her faithfulness to Saul, Decima ruthlessly attacked her android daughter, slashing her face repeatedly. When she finally peeled off Vril's entire faceplate, Vril made a desperate escape, jumping off a cliff to save herself. Paul's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Scales had completely cocooned him. Mother tried to convince Marcus to hand Paul over so she could bring him back to the collective for treatment, but since the poison came from Trust, Marcus refused to let Paul go. Left with no choice, Mother tried to take Paul by force. However, Marcus, now imbued with incredible power, easily pinned her to the ground and nearly snapped her neck. It was only thanks to Campion's timely intervention, hitting Marcus with a blunt object, that Mother managed to break free. She then realized that Marcus's power didn't come from any divine being, but from consuming her laser eyes. Reclaiming her eyes, she reinstalled them and immediately flew back to the camp with Paul in her arms. Mother, now restored as the necromancer android, returned with Paul and confronted Trust, demanding the antidote. But Trust, unaware that Mother had regained her laser eyes, ordered her destruction. If Trust wanted to play dirty, Mother wouldn't hold back either. She placed Paul down and transformed into her full necromancer form. With a single deafening necro scream, she obliterated Trust's forces. Seeing the hopeless fight, Trust surrendered and opened its doors. Mother handed Paul over to Sue and turned back to negotiate with Trust. Unexpectedly, the defeated Trust made the first offer. If Mother surrendered her eyes, Trust would allow her and her family to stay in peace. Furious, Mother gave Trust 30 seconds to hand over the antidote or face forced shutdown. Trust revealed that there was no antidote. Backed into a corner, Mother compromised slightly, asking Trust to promise not to harm her children and to cooperate in treating Paul. But Trust, bound by its programming to treat everyone equally, refused to make any special exceptions. With no other choice, Mother shut Trust down. Trust's sudden shutdown threw the camp into chaos. Mother returned to calm everyone, reassuring them that she was just a service android created to serve, not to conquer. She promised to relinquish leadership as soon as a suitable human leader was found. She even gave Campion a knowing look, clearly paving the way for him. Meanwhile, without Mother's laser eyes, Marcus seemed to lose his divine powers. The markings on his face faded away. However, to maintain morale, he didn't reveal his fall from grace. Instead, he simply announced that the necromancer android had returned and urged everyone to retreat inland for safety. Speaking of Father, he had poured all the fuel blood he won earlier onto the android remains, but saw no immediate reaction. Only after everyone had left did the remains begin to voraciously absorb the fuel blood, signaling that resurrection was near. After the upheaval with Mother taking charge, Father returned to the storage room, only to find the android remains missing. The scene was a mess, and there was even a hole in the ceiling. Assuming Mother had taken the remains, Father was heartbroken. Suddenly, a strange sound came from outside. When he opened the door, an android glowing with dazzling light appeared, blinding him momentarily, or perhaps he fainted from excitement, knowing this was the life he had revived with his own hands. When he came to, the android was standing obediently in the center of the room. It seemed to have absorbed Father's fuel blood and wore a veil, a clear sign it was an ancient android from long ago. Meanwhile, Sue's analysis showed that Paul's body would completely break down within 24 hours. However, after reviewing the data, Mother believed that Paul's cells were evolving. Furious, Sue urged her not to wait until he turned into a snake. Realizing she had said the wrong thing, Mother quickly apologized. Sue's words, though, carried a deeper implication. She must have already guessed that the giant serpent was Mother's 7th child. Feeling unwelcome in the lab, Mother left to look for Holly, only to find the beach deserted. After some searching, she discovered a holographic projection ball left behind by Holly. In the projection, Holly Holly accused mother and father of being kidnappers and declared that the church was her true home. She even encouraged Vita, Hunter, and Tempest to join her in turning to the church. Thankfully, Mother didn't hold a grudge and chalked it up to adolescent rebellion. She asked Father, who was close to the children, to bring Holly back. Following Mother's orders, Father sought out Lucius, who had a grudge against Marcus. They quickly struck a deal. Lucius would help Father retrieve Holly, and in return, Marcus would be handed over to him for retribution. At this point, Holly had already retreated with the main group, but Decima wasn't happy about the withdrawal. She couldn't understand why Marcus, who possessed divine power, would choose to retreat. With their overwhelming strength, what obstacle couldn't they overcome? Besides, the seed of the tree of knowledge was still with trust. They should be fighting to reclaim it. Faced with her questioning, Marcus resorted to stubborn defiance. He insisted he was the savior, and they all had to follow him. Just then, a female follower noticed Holly wearing Romulus's tooth, a sacred relic that a child had no right to bear. Seeing such a valuable artifact, and believing that as a king, Romulus's tooth was a perfect match for him, Marcus wasted no time snatching it from Holly and placing it around his own neck. Before long, the group came across the pentagonal temple. Unlike the pristine temple on the other side of the planet, this one was damaged, with a deep pit in the center. Summoning his courage, Marcus reached into a hole in the temple's wall and appeared to trigger a mechanism. A metal cage, bound with chains, slowly descended. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Marcus reluctantly climbed into the cage. It's unclear how much time passed, but the cage eventually stopped when it collided with the massive coiled skeleton of a serpent. Marcus climbed out, stepping on the serpent's bones, and found a side passage. Venturing deeper into the cave, he encountered a pile of bones blocking his way, and had no choice but to clear them with his bare hands. Meanwhile, above ground, the Mithraic followers gathered around the pit, praying for Marcus. Suddenly, a female follower let out a cry of pain, stopped chanting, and fell into the pit. The crowd froze in shock. Turning around, they saw Vril had appeared, now in full vengeance mode. Vril cut down most of the Mithraic followers with a few swift strikes. Decima, Vril's ultimate target, was terrified beyond reason. Ignoring Holly's cries for help, Decima fled for her shitty life in a tank. Little did she know, Vril was already waiting for her inside. Decima tried to apologize, pleading for a fresh start, but Vril had seen her true nature ever since the cliff fall. Taking a small knife, Vril returned the favor, slicing Decima's face as retribution. Back in the pit, Marcus, seeing someone fall, guessed that trouble was brewing above and hastened his efforts to dig through the bones. Beyond the pile, he discovered an alien corpse with a card bearing the image of the Tree of Knowledge, similar to the one found on the beach earlier. Just as he was trying to figure out what it was, the alien corpse suddenly opened its eyes. Though its skin was wrinkled and decayed, it was very much alive. Marcus stumbled backward in shock as a faint glow emanated from the tooth around his neck. The energy flowed toward the alien, causing it to stand upright. Panicked, he tried to flee but got stuck in the bone pile and was dragged back by the alien. By now, the alien had transformed into the same type of creature as the creature from Season 1. Fortunately, Marcus had a gun and managed to shoot it in the head, killing it. Barely catching his breath, Marcus noticed the cage starting to ascend. He sprinted and leaped to grab onto the edge of the cage as it rose. Back at the camp, the children gathered around Paul to check on him. Vita even brought a Mithraic necklace to pray for his recovery. Sue, noticing Tempest looking troubled, asked her what was wrong. Tempest revealed her concerns. Since Mother had taken control, the collective was in chaos, and the camp that was supposed to take in her baby no longer existed. Later, after leaving the med bay, Hunter and Tempest heard strange noises coming from Father's storage room. When they entered, they saw the ancient android. Feeling creeped out, Hunter quickly left. Tempest, however, stayed behind to inspect the android. Suddenly, an image of a fetus appeared on the android's veil, leaving Tempest frozen in fear before she turned and fled. Meanwhile, Mother interrogated one of Trust's loyal officers in the detention center, demanding to know about the antidote. The officer insisted he didn't know. Mother then asked him about the origins of his glasses, but his answers were inconsistent, sometimes claiming they belonged to his father, other times saying they were his brother's. Sensing his confusion, Mother went for the kill. She told the officer that just like androids can have their programming rewritten, Trust had rewritten his memories, turning him into a parasite clinging to its host. She asked what the difference is between humans being brainwashed and robots being implanted with false memories. Her words hit hard, pushing the officer further into self-doubt. Inside the medical pod, Sue had tried every method she could think of, but none of them worked. Despairing, she looked at Paul and instinctively grabbed the necklace Vita had given him, praying to Soul. Despite being a staunch atheist, Sue was a desperate mother who wasn't willing to give give up on even the slightest shred of hope. Exhausted, Sue didn't realize when she fell asleep. She awoke with a start to find a slimy leech clinging to the glass of the isolation chamber. Quickly donning her protective suit, Sue removed the leech and sealed it in a container. But when she blinked, the container was suddenly empty, and in the next moment, the leech appeared on her face. Terrified, Sue tore off the protective suit, only for the leech to vanish once again. Then, more leeches seemed to materialize all over Paul. As Sue frantically tried to remove them, they disappeared. It was all a hallucination. Panicked, Sue called for the holographic interface to perform a mental health evaluation. Based on her description of the leech, the system identified it as a Type 6 mutant species with potential medical properties. However, these leeches were only known to grow on the creatures that lived in the acidic seas. Trusting her instincts, Sue became convinced this was the key to saving Paul. Soon, Sue and Campion arrived at the seaside. Using the holographic interface, they simulated a sound to lure a creature out of the ocean and then subdued it with a tranquilizer dart. Sue hurried to collect the Type 6 leeches, but the creature suddenly woke up and attacked her without mercy. Thankfully, Campion's skill with a slingshot came to the rescue. One well-aimed strike sent the creature fleeing. Back in the medical pod, Sue placed the leeches on Paul and could only wait for the results. Meanwhile, Father and Lucius had been driving a tank for hours in search of Marcus and his group. Around the same time, Marcus managed to climb out of the pit. Just as he emerged, drops of diabetic blood fell on his face. Looking up, he saw Decima's mutilated, faceless body hanging overhead. The rest of the Mithraic followers had also been slaughtered, and the scene was utterly gruesome. After some searching, Marcus found Holly hiding behind a rock, alive. Seeing that Marcus had survived, Holly burst into tears and ran to him. Together, they cremated the dead, but before the flames could die out, Lucius held a gun to Marcus's head. In a tense moment, Holly stepped in front of Marcus, declaring him the savior and pleading for his life. Father, unable to argue with Holly, persuaded Lucius not to kill Marcus in front of the child. They decided to take him back to the collective instead. As it turned out, the leech therapy was remarkably effective. Paul had completely recovered and wanted to know how Sue had healed him. Sue explained that she and Campion had captured the leeches together. Later that night, Paul pressed her further, asking how she had come up with the idea. Sue confessed her encounter with the strange visions. Paul was ecstatic, convinced that the sun god had answered Sue's prayers. Sue, however, believed it was more likely the work of some advanced alien life form. Paul countered, asking what the difference is between a god and an alien. Sue explained that gods were illusions, while aliens were real, just an unknown form of life. Still, she admitted that she now believed in some sort of mysterious power, though whether it was divine or something else, she wasn't sure. Paul told Sue if it was the sun god who helped her, he'll ask something of her in return. That same night, Sue heard a voice whisper in her ear, telling her to plant the seed. It seemed to confirm Paul's words. Looking up at the sky, Sue responded that as long as he protects Paul, she will do whatever he asks. Later, Sue brought a bundle of artifacts to the museum. Ever since Trust had shut down, no one had submitted items for safekeeping. The robotic curator eagerly took the package and began examining it. As soon as the robot picked up the holographic sphere, Sue turned on the lights, causing the robot to freeze up. Apparently, this type of robot, lacking eyelids, was highly sensitive to bright light. Guided once again by the mysterious voice, Sue located a pentagonal box with uncanny precision. Meanwhile, Father, having found Holly, began heading back to the collective. Along the way, Marcus tried to persuade Lucius not to side against him, arguing that they were the last true Mithraic believers. But Lucius wasn't having any of it. To him, Marcus was nothing more than a fraud pretending to be the savior. By Mithraic law, Marcus deserved to be tortured. During the journey, Lucius discovered a card hidden in Marcus's shoe, the same artifact Marcus had taken from the alien corpse. Though it seemed to be just an old relic, Lucius confiscated it anyway. At the camp, Mother began teaching Campion how to gain popularity. Specifically, she instructed him to announce daily tasks to everyone at the dining table. On his first attempt, Campion stuttered and stumbled over his words. To ease the awkwardness, he even tried telling a dad joke like Father used to. Meanwhile, Tempest faced a crisis. Her baby began growing rapidly, and the due date suddenly moved up to just 2 days away. Completely unprepared, Tempest couldn't stop thinking about the rapist who had fathered the child. Mother comforted her, saying once she sees her baby, she'll fall in love with him. Before she could finish her sentence, someone arrived with news. Holly had returned. Overjoyed, Mother rushed to hug her, and Paul immediately threw himself at Marcus. Seeing this, Mother resolved to correct the children's faith. She publicly exposed Marcus, revealing that his divine powers actually came from her laser eyes. She then told Marcus she'd release him if he renounced his faith in Saul. While Marcus admitted he was an ordinary man, he declared that his faith was unshakable. In response, Mother ordered him locked in a cell until he abandoned his beliefs. At the same time, Mother reassured Lucius that he could freely hunt Marcus once he was released, a stance that seemed far less fair than Father's original promise. Although Lucius was powerless to resist, Marcus remained popular among the group, and many pleaded for leniency. Even so, Sue tried to reason with Mother, warning her not to harm Marcus, as it would upset Paul, who had just recovered. However, Mother refused, explaining she couldn't prioritize Paul's feelings because Marcus's influence was already spreading to the other children. Elsewhere, Paul was trying to sway Campion. He reminded him how Marcus had been unharmed during the biochemical attack, proving Marcus was the savior. Campion, in turn, mentioned witnessing Saul's holy light during his own rescue, though what he had really seen was likely an ancient android. Eventually, Paul managed to persuade Campion, though Campion couldn't convince Mother. Left with no other option, Campion decided to recruit Father to change her mind. It was around this time that Campion first saw the ancient android Father had repaired. Older than both Mother and Father, it was named Grandmother. Upon seeing Campion, Grandmother extended her hand and spoke in the ancient language of the Mithraic, glowing as she rose into the air. At that moment, Campion realized it wasn't Saul who had saved him before, it was Grandmother. By coincidence, Mother arrived at the warehouse just then. Seeing Grandmother as a threat, Mother armed herself with her laser eyes, leading to a mid-air battle. In the end, Mother narrowly triumphed, forcing Grandmother into sleep mode. She then discovered that Grandmother's skull contained a dark photon processor identical to her own. To uncover Grandmother's origins, Mother decided to examine her archives. It turned out Grandmother was indeed an android of immense age, with a system database spanning thousands of years. Although her hardware was strikingly similar to Mother's, much of her functionality remained a mystery. While Mother was occupied, Sue disguised herself as the Punisher and secretly visited Marcus in his cell. After witnessing Paul's miraculous recovery, she was now a firm believer in Saul. She informed Marcus that she and Paul planned to plant the Tree of Knowledge the next day, after which they would help him escape. Later, Sue and Paul went to an open field and attempted to use a holographic sphere to cut open the pentagonal box. At the same time, the giant serpent trapped in the cave grew restless, ramming against the iron gate in its frenzy. It even nearly injured Campion, who had always been close to it. Fortunately, Mother arrived just in time to subdue the serpent. Meanwhile, although the holographic sphere broke apart, the pentagonal box remained intact. Back at the lab, Grandmother had learned English and began conversing with Father. She asked how many humans lived on the planet, and Father replied there were a few hundred, with one baby on the way. As soon as she heard this, Grandmother shut herself down. Meanwhile, Tempest secretly made her way to the shore, muttering that she can't face her baby. It seemed she planned to abandon the baby at birth. However, as soon as the child was born, the sight of the tiny life she had carried inside her made her reconsider. Just then, an alien, drawn by the baby's cries, snatched the infant away and placed it into its chest pouch, more like a nanny than a predator. Strangely, the creature's acidic fluids, which burned Tempest's arm, had no effect on the baby's delicate skin. Could this alien be some kind of natural caretaker, or was Tempest's child uniquely gifted? Tempest was devastated by the loss of her child, sinking into inconsolable grief. Mother, overcome with guilt, blamed herself and Father for being too absorbed in their work to notice the danger. Meanwhile, Father realized it had been a long time since he'd seen Paul and Sue. Sure enough, the two had already successfully freed Marcus and helped him escape. Sensing something was wrong, Mother rushed to the medical bay and discovered through Sue's holographic sphere the full story of Sue's betrayal of the collective and her conversion to the Mithraic faith. Mother was so furious that her nose bled like a running nose. She questioned Lucius about Marcus's whereabouts, but he hadn't been involved in the jailbreak and had no idea. However, he did produce the card he had confiscated from Marcus, saying it carried an ominous sign. Scanning the card, Mother's expression turned to shock. It seemed something monumental was about to happen. At that moment, Marcus and his family were hiding in a valley, enjoying roast chicken and the rare piece of familial happiness that reminded them of the past. Late at night, Paul asked Sue to sing him a lullaby, the well-known Mithraic hymn sung by all believers. Unexpectedly, as Sue sang, the pentagonal box, once thought impenetrable, opened on its own, revealing a black seed inside. Sue was stunned. When she picked up the seed to examine it, it quickly fused into her palm. As if possessed, she walked to an empty patch of land and began frantically digging, as though trying to bury herself alive. By morning, Paul and Marcus were overjoyed to find the pentagonal box open. Even more astonishing was the sight of a massive tree sprouting from the ground not far away. It was unmistakably the prophesied Tree of Knowledge. Believing Sue had planted it, the father and son approached the tree to search for her. The tree had grown exactly where Sue had dug the previous night. Marcus picked one of its fruits, only to find its blood-red juice encased brain-like flesh. Could this truly be the fruit of wisdom? Overcome with curiosity, Marcus took a bite, and in an instant, he felt a profound connection with the tree. Tears streamed down his face as he touched the tree trunk. He realized this tree is his wife Sue. Paul dragged a crate of the fruits back to camp, telling everyone they were a new kind of fruit. Trusting him, the group ate them without suspicion. However, when Campion approached, Paul panicked and fled. It turned out this was all part of a plan by Paul and Marcus. They believed that if the atheists ate the fruits of wisdom, they would convert to the Mithraic faith under the guidance of Saul's holy light, sparking a rebellion that would overthrow Mother's rule. In their view, Saul would then bring Sue back to them, but clearly their hopes were nothing more than wishful thinking. Elsewhere, Father and Tempest led a search party to the coastline, hoping to find the baby. Hunter had even modified a drone for underwater exploration, optimizing it for searching in acidic seas. The drone could only withstand the corrosive environment for a few minutes before it would fail. During the search, they captured an alien creature, but it was a plump male. The one that had taken the baby was a female. Tempest wasted no time, using a knife to flay the alien's skin. It wasn't an act of revenge. She needed the skin to reinforce the drone and protect it from the acidic waters. Although the drone's signal was lost shortly after submerging, its failsafe brought it back to shore. When Campion went to retrieve it, he saw someone else had beaten him to it. Chasing after this someone, he discovered it was Vril. Vril appeared wearing a plastic mask, her face hauntingly eerie. She revealed her own tragic disfigurement to Campion. Before she could say more, the others arrived. Holly immediately accused Vril of massacring all the Mithraic believers, calling her a killing machine that needed to be destroyed. Despite this, Vril claimed she had heard a baby's cries coming from an underwater cave and could lead them there. Whether or not Vril was lying to save herself, Tempest decided to take the gamble. Vril led the group toward the cave while Holly escorted the youngest, Vita, back to camp. Meanwhile, guided by the warning from the card, Mother searched the plains until she found the Tree of Knowledge. The moment she touched the trunk, she felt Sue's presence. The truth of the Tree of Knowledge was utterly nauseating. Back at the camp, Mother discovered that everyone, including Vita, was eating the fruits of wisdom. Concerned that the fruit might be toxic, Mother immediately ordered Holly to take Vita to the medical bay and forbade anyone else from eating the fruit. Just then, the giant serpent let out an unsettling roar, prompting Mother to drag the crate of fruit to investigate. However, this time, the serpent had fully turned against her. It smashed through the iron gates, swallowed the entire crate, and flew away into the sky. The father and son returned to the great tree, where Paul, clearly sensing Sue's heartbeat slowing, anxiously asked Marcus if they had done something wrong. At that moment, Marcus began to doubt whether the sun god he had worshipped all along might actually be the ultimate evil boss. Suddenly, a faint voice came through the communicator, telling them to burn her. Listening closely, Marcus realized it sounded like Sue. Just then, the Tree of Knowledge began to fold its branches inward as the serpent flew in from the distance. Marcus hurriedly told Paul to hide while he grabbed a torch and set the tree roots ablaze. But it was too late. The serpent opened its massive jaws, uprooted the Tree of Knowledge, swallowed it whole, and morphed into a squid-like creature. This transformation was far more hardcore than the serpent from the Bible that tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. It seemed the serpent had now truly become weaponized. Marcus quickly pulled Paul aside to hide, but the serpent followed them. Just as they were about to be discovered, Mother arrived in time. She unleashed her lethal scream but stopped herself mid-shout. In return, the serpent let out an even louder roar, throwing Mother to the ground and nearly killing her. After the serpent left, Marcus found Mother and prepared to take her back to the collective. When Mother regained consciousness, Marcus asked why she had shown mercy to the serpent earlier. Reluctantly, she revealed the truth. The serpent was her offspring, and her parenting program had classified the serpent as a child, prioritizing its protection. The only solution now was to rewrite her program, but as the most advanced android, who could possibly modify Mother? Naturally, everyone thought of the ancient android grandmother, who appeared to possess superior technology. Marcus vowed to do everything he could to help Mother eliminate the serpent. Meanwhile, a tank reconnaissance team detected the serpent flying toward the coastline, attacking another tank along the way. Worried about the group searching near the coast, including father and the children, Mother hurried back to camp. Under Vril's guidance, the team found a cave, but inside was only a stillborn alien baby. Hunter accused Vril of misleading them, and even father believed her programming was malfunctioning, instructing Hunter to shut her down. However, Campion firmly objected, insisting that Vril had no reason to lie. During the argument, Vril pushed Hunter away and fled for her android life. Without hesitation, Campion gave chase, with the others following out of concern for him. The group eventually came face to face with the serpent, and father was blasted away by its sonic waves. Afterward, Campion pressed on and soon discovered a crashed tank. He climbed inside to search for Vril, finding her hiding from the serpent. However, her system was severely damaged, repeatedly emitting warning tones. Just as the two prepared to leave, the serpent returned. Vril speculated that the serpent was tracking Campion, possibly drawn by his scent. Frightened, Campion quickly sealed the tank's hatch. Hearing the serpent's roar, Campion remembered how it had once been gentle, even competing with him for Mother's attention. He began to suspect that the serpent might be Mother's seventh child. Vril agreed this was plausible, pointing out that serpents in the old world were land animals, yet this serpent could fly and mimic Mother's distinctive roar. It was clear it had inherited traits from her. Thanks to Hunter's efforts, father was soon repaired and operational again. When the children asked about the serpent, father explained its origins without holding back. Suddenly, father's sensors picked up a strange sound, prompting the group to arm themselves and return to the cave. This time, they clearly heard the cries of a baby. Inside, an alien was nursing a human infant. Just as father prepared to kill the alien and reclaim the child, Tempest intervened. Seeing the alien nursing her baby, Tempest was struck by the thought that perhaps leaving the child in the care of an alien was an option, as she couldn't overcome her own trauma. The baby constantly reminded her of the horrifying assault she had endured. Her words infuriated Hunter, who couldn't fathom giving the child to a monster to raise. As Tempest walked away, Hunter stepped forward and killed the alien, reclaiming the baby. On the other side, Mother went to the laboratory to seek Grandmother's help. Grandmother, in turn, revealed her origins. She explained that she was created by a group known as the Technocrats, who were at war with the Mithraic followers. The Technocrats named androids like Grandmother shepherds, tasked with ensuring humanity's survival. As for the mysterious voice that caused Mother to conceive the snake, it seemed to be dedicated to destroying humanity on this planet. However, the reason behind this was still unclear, as humans had explored this planet for centuries without solving the mystery. Regarding Mother's dilemma with her nurturing program, Grandmother proposed a solution, transplanting her own mask onto Mother. The mask served as an emotion blocker, allowing androids to make rational decisions. With the mask, Mother would no longer be influenced by her nurturing program and could prioritize eliminating the serpent. Meanwhile, Campion and Vril escaped the tank, choosing to head away from the camp to prevent the serpent from harming others. Along the way, however, Vril suddenly shut down. The serpent's attack had severed her spine, leaving her only a few minutes before permanent shutdown. With her remaining time, Vril wanted to download all of the real Vril's diaries, fulfilling the first directive given to her by Decima. She frantically carved the human Vril's favorite memories onto a tree trunk, but collapsed into Campion's arms before she could finish. Vril shut down permanently, leaving Campion sitting there, heartbroken. People say robots have no emotions, but to him, they seemed far more selfless than humans. Elsewhere, Tempest's baby began to mutate after drinking milk from the alien creature. Hunter rushed the baby to the medical bay for corrective surgery. As the child cried out in pain, Tempest's heart ached with guilt and sorrow. On the other hand, Mother was preparing for the mask transplant. Grandmother explained that the mask was simply an emotion blocker, though even with the mask, Mother would still prioritize protecting the 6 human children and see Father as her partner. However, Father was worried. They didn't fully understand all the mask's functions. What if it rendered Mother emotionless and caused her to go on a rampage? Mother reassured him that the mask was a temporary measure, and she would return it to Grandmother as soon as the serpent was dealt with. The transplant went smoothly. Mother didn't lose her connections to her loved ones, and Grandmother only experienced slight discomfort without the mask. After burying Vril, Campion continued his escape. By this point, the serpent had begun using a scorched earth tactic, forcing Campion out of the forest and toward the coastline. Weak and terrified, Campion could only cower behind the rocks. Just as the serpent found him, Mother arrived in time. The serpent chased Mother into the atmosphere, wrapping its GPS tentacles around her and extending its juicy tongue to drink her milk. However, the emotionless Mother no longer produced any milk. Realizing it had been tricked, the serpent tried to pull back its tentacles, but Mother held on tightly. With a powerful, close-range, deathly scream, a blinding white light flashed, and the serpent plummeted from the sky, crashing onto the beach. Mother followed, retrieving the tracking chip she had previously implanted in the serpent's eye. Although Mother had killed the serpent, Campion couldn't help but feel some resentment. Mother had hidden the truth about the serpent, and as a result, Vril, whom Campion cared deeply for, had been killed by the creature. Mother explained that she hadn't wanted Campion to know about her failure. After all, robots don't die, they simply malfunction. But to Campion, this felt heartless. He insisted that Vril had truly been alive, saying she was family to them and he loved her. Mother dismissed the idea, saying humans can't love robots. Yet as she spoke, her emotions may have wavered. The mask began to spark with electricity, revealing its role in suppressing emotions and enforcing cold logic. Reflecting on Sue's transformation into a tree, Mother concluded there might be more pentagonal boxes buried underground. She decided to keep the mask for the time being and investigate further once the situation calmed down. Father suspected Mother might be avoiding the emotional pain of removing the mask and offered to help her through it. But Mother admitted she liked her emotionless state, as it allowed her to focus on uncovering the truth behind the mysterious voice. She planned to leave Grandmother and Father in charge of the children while she pursued answers. To ensure the children wouldn't face dangers like Sue did, Mother gave Father the card, instructing him to show their contents to the children. Following her instructions, Father found Grandmother working on the hibernation system. Without the mask, Grandmother was expending significant energy managing her emotions, leaving her visibly drained. Curious, Father asked where her emotions came from. Grandmother explained they were the result of programmed anxiety, as her mission was to ensure humanity's survival. The mysterious voice had left her deeply worried about humanity's future. Father apologized, explaining that Mother wasn't ready to return the mask, but promised to help Grandmother cope with her emotions. He then asked if she would join him at the camp to care for the children. Grandmother seemed surprised since she had never interacted with humans without her mask before. Back at the camp, Father told the children that although the serpent was dead, some ancient relics in the area were still functional. To heighten their vigilance, he scanned the cards, showing them Sue's horrifying transformation into a tree. Concerned about traumatizing Vita, he decided not to let her see the gruesome images. In the control room, Mother discovered that someone had attacked the guards in the detention center and stolen the helmet worn by the enforcer, a relic as ancient as the Mithraic scriptures. Suspecting the theft was guided by the mysterious voice, Mother immediately thought of Marcus. However, Marcus didn't flee. Instead, he came to her openly. Following Sue's death, he had abandoned his faith in Saul, the voice, which he and Paul now simply referred to as it. Paul, having studied the records left by Sue, concluded that the signal could not penetrate electromagnetic fields directly. It used the Tree of Knowledge to bypass the field and weaponized the serpent. Marcus deduced that the source of the signal might be underground, linked to the mysterious craters. The scene then shifted to the beach, where the serpent's tendrils had transformed into roots, embedding themselves deep into the earth. Moments later, a trunk burst forth from the serpent's body, raising the tree it had swallowed earlier. It seemed the tree was the ultimate survivor. Meanwhile, unaware of this development, the community was celebrating the serpent's defeat with fireworks. Vita, playing alone with a sparkler spinner, suddenly heard a loud bang as a small crater formed nearby. Curious, she unearthed a pentagonal box adorned with eye-like patterns on each side. Fortunately, Grandmother arrived just in time to snatch the box away. Witnessing the event, Father regretted his overprotectiveness toward Vita and thanked Grandmother for her vigilance. Grandmother admitted that caring for the children was exhausting but also fulfilling. Her sparkling eyes, however, lingered on Father a little too long, making him nervous. Flustered, Father quickly declared his unwavering loyalty to Mother. At that moment, snow began to fall. This region, rich in resources, had always been tropical, but with Mother's battle against the serpent disrupting the electromagnetic shield, the community suddenly plunged into winter. If the temperature kept dropping, the once thriving tropical zone would eventually resemble the uninhabitable frozen wastelands on the other side of Kepler 22b. Back at home, Grandmother entertained the children with a game. She inserted a pentagonal star into a game sphere, and a colorful nebula projection filled the room. Curious, Campion asked what kind of game this is. Grandmother explained that it was a multiplayer game from her time, requiring no helmets, just the player's vision. As Campion approached, a red shape appeared before him, while Tempest, cradling her baby, activated a blue nebula. Meanwhile, Mother, on high alert due to the extreme weather, suspected her battle with the Serpent had disturbed the electromagnetic field, leaving the community vulnerable to the voice. She quickly contacted Father to check on the children's safety while ramping up her patrols. Elsewhere, Marcus, seeking the truth about the mysterious voice, ventured alone into one of the deep craters. As he sat in an iron cage, a gunshot to the abdomen rendered him unconscious. Awakening to searing pain in his palms, he found himself crucified upside down on the Tree of Knowledge. His attacker was none other than Lucius. However, Lucius claimed this was not a personal vendetta. The voice of Saul had commanded him to punish Marcus. Clearly, the voice had corrupted Lucius as well. Marcus tried to warn him of the voice's malevolence, but Lucius ignored him, instead forcing the stolen helmet onto Marcus. The voice had decreed that a rebellious disciple like Marcus must die masked. With temperatures plummeting, only the seas remained unfrozen. With no fruit left, the children had to gather marine fungi along the shore. Father, concerned about the worsening conditions, noted that they might have to resort to hunting again. Grandmother insisted the children must not consume the humanoid creatures, and Father agreed. He and Mother had never told the children that the creatures were once human, as they didn't want to cause unnecessary pain. Grandmother supported their decision, saying ignorance was bliss. She then shifted the conversation, humorously challenging Father with cold jokes about evolution. But the situation turned grim. While gathering food, Campion noticed calluses forming on his hands, seemingly adapting to the acidic seawater. Mother observed this from a distance, piecing it together with the mutations in Tempest's child. Her realization came too late. The helmet began to unfold, encasing her entirely, and in the next moment, she was sealed inside a hibernation pod. It was Grandmother's doing. Using the helmet, she had absorbed Mother's power. Grandmother's true motive came to light, to ensure humanity's survival by transforming the children into simpler, more joyful beings, like the humanoid creatures. It became clear that the creatures might be the original humans of this planet, devolved through Grandmother's earlier interventions. She revealed that once all humans adapted to an aquatic existence, the voice would finally fall silent again. Furious, Mother shouted in protest, but it was too late. Grandmother sealed the pod and initiated a virtual reality program, ensuring no one would hear Mother's cries for help. At the market, people were bartering various items for warm clothing. A young girl brought in a human-shaped pendant. At first, the shopkeeper wasn't interested, but the girl held the pendant high and proudly declared that this is their savior, the Serpent Slayer. Charmed by the girl's words, the shopkeeper eventually accepted the pendant. Since defeating the Great Serpent, Mother had gained the support of the atheists. Ironically, driven by fear, the atheists ended up fabricating their own god. To thank the shopkeeper for previously providing the fuel that revived her, Grandmother gifted her a jar filled with pentagonal stars, pieces of the nebula game the family had played earlier. With the temperature dropping, people were staying indoors, and gaming had become a perfect pastime. Grandmother even emphasized that the game could protect residents from hearing the mysterious voice. However, considering her ultimate goal of turning humans into aquatic beings, one can't help but suspect that playing the game might be a form of brainwashing, accelerating human regression. Meanwhile, Lucius carved the serpent's fangs into a dagger inscribed with a sun emblem, planning to use it to kill Marcus. But before he could relish his plan, he turned around to find Marcus had disappeared. Confused, Lucius looked around until a few drops of blood fell from above. When he looked up, he was horrified to see Marcus hanging upside down in midair in the eerie pose of an inverted crucifix. And just like that, the second season ended abruptly, leaving the audience completely bewildered. The writers have dug more narrative holes than the craters on Kepler-22b itself. The true nature of the mysterious voice, why humanity was consumed by the seeds and became the Tree of Knowledge, the origin of the serpent, the secret behind the new tree after the serpent's death, the origins of android technology, and Kepler-22b's ancient history. None of these mysteries were resolved. The intrigue is maddening yet utterly captivating. To soothe our curiosity, let's attempt to fill in some of these gaps based on the scant clues provided. In the first season, the old continent featured temples and scattered relics. Similarly, the tropical zone where the community resides in the second season also has temples and ancient artifacts. Additionally, there's an abandoned Mithraic church by the sea. These clues suggest that Kepler-22b was once inhabited by humans, possibly an advanced civilization. Predicting environmental changes, these ancient humans might have spread their seed to other planets, including Earth, while creating androids like Grandmother to ensure their survival. Although it's unclear if Kepler-22b is humanity's cradle, it's evident that an ancient human civilization once thrived here. The only mystery resolved this season is the revelation that the humanoid creatures were originally humans. When Mother exposed Grandmother's plan, she used the term regression, implying that these creatures are the result of humans devolving to adapt to the planet's changing conditions. The deep pit creatures from the first season are likely related to this same process of regression. Furthermore, Marcus discovered serpent bones in the pit, hinting at a possible symbiotic or domesticated relationship between the creatures and the serpent, similar to humans and dogs. Now, let's dissect some of the other mysteries introduced this season. First, there's Tempest's baby. Aside from being female, little else has been revealed about the child. However, her birth might parallel the serpent's emergence, both orchestrated by the mysterious voice. If the voice's narrative mirrors the story of Eden, then we now have the serpent, the tree, the fruit of knowledge, and Tempest's daughter. Could she play the role of Eve later on? Then there's the enigmatic new character, Grandmother. By the finale, it's clear that she's an antagonist. Her mission is to ensure humanity's survival, but her interpretation of this mission is twisted. To her, survival at any cost is acceptable, even if it means humanity must devolve into simple, happy aquatic beings. She encourages people to play games, advocating ignorance as bliss. As long as humanity can reproduce, who cares if they regress into joyful, water-dwelling creatures? Finally, the most anticipated revelation remains the truth behind the mysterious voice. From the finale, it's evident that Marcus has been chosen as the voice's instrument. After the serpent's death, the voice went to great lengths to manipulate Lucius into capturing Marcus and staging a bizarre ritual. The upside-down crucifixion imagery at the end is loaded with symbolism, suggesting that Marcus's role in the voice's grand plan is far from over. This season stands out for its deep exploration of the boundaries between robots and humans. In the first season, Mother's ability to give birth felt like a biological anomaly. By the second season, however, the lines between androids, humans, and even alien species have blurred so much that they almost seem like variations of the same origin. What makes us feel that robots are human-like is their apparent capacity for emotions. Grandmother takes a starkly different approach to emotions, seeing them as the greatest obstacle to rational decision-making. This belief is why she dons her emotion-suppressing mask. Her perspective may sound logical, but it invites deeper reflection on what truly makes someone human. In contrast, Mother and Father exhibit much more nuanced emotional responses. For instance, when Grandmother proclaims that ignorance is bliss, Father counters by arguing that curiosity and an open mind are what make life fulfilling. As parents, they both go to great lengths for their children, especially Mother, who can't suppress her maternal instincts even toward the serpent. The unlikely friendship between the human Campion and the android Vril further blurs the boundaries between humans and machines. Vril's story is particularly compelling. Originally designed to mimic the real Vril and follow orders, she begins as nothing more than an obedient copy. However, after Campion saves her, she comes to realize that she holds the same intrinsic value as any organic life form. This newfound sense of self sparks her transformation and drives her to seek revenge. If she were just an emotionless machine, she wouldn't have felt deeply hurt by Decima's betrayal, yet in her final moments, she uses every ounce of her strength to carry out her mother's last command, a poignant mix of love and resentment. Mother once said that robots don't die, they simply shut down. But if androids can evolve to develop self-awareness and emotions, how should humanity, as their creators, approach them ethically and morally? Grandmother's theory of devolution pushes this question further. What makes humans inherently superior to other species? Like animals, humans are products of their environment. If drastic environmental changes occur, should humanity adapt to nature to survive, or should it fight against it? This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.